again, and welcome to another episode of Digging Deeper. It is great to be with you as always, and I hope that you have gotten a good start into your life group semester here, however you are doing that and whenever you started. If you're watching this as part of a group, wonderful, and some of you may be watching this as individuals, and that's great too. Whatever works for you. But what we do in here, as you probably know, with this Digging Deeper, is that we go into the scripture, or actually the topic, more often just the topic that was covered on Sunday morning from usually a different scripture, and we go at it maybe at a greater level of examination than you might in Sunday be able to on a Sunday morning. And obviously this is facilitated using questions which allow for discussion. And so that's the format that I will use. I will ask a question. I'll pause just a moment so you can pause the video, and then your group can discuss the question that I put out there. So that's how we do it. I hope that you enjoy this message on Sunday about work. So we'll be talking about work today. From Genesis, from where it all started back in Genesis. So before we get going today, let me ask these first three questions that I always like to ask, because these are the questions that get everybody's minds reoriented toward the message and get everybody thinking about what was talked about on Sunday, what the message was about. And so first question is this: what did you like in the message? What did you like in the message? Was there something that you particularly liked in the message? Take a moment, discuss that, and come back here in a minute. All right, second question: what did you disagree with in the message? What did you disagree with in the message? Was there something that you maybe took issue with in the message? And that's okay. Maybe there was something that just wasn't clear to you from the message. Maybe that's more likely scenario. If there was something that you just needed further clarification on, or something maybe you just didn't agree with, take a moment and discuss that with your group. Have a little conversation with them about that, and maybe you'll get some clarity there. So what did you disagree with from or in the message? Take a moment to discuss that. Third question here that we always ask is, what do you remember the most from the message? Maybe there was something that particularly stood out to you that really stuck in your mind from Sunday. Well, if there was something in that category, share that, because maybe that was something that somebody else forgot about or would do well to remember. Share that with each other, and maybe why that was particularly memorable to you. So take a moment and answer the question, what do you remember the most from the message? Okay, let's get going on these first two questions, which are kind of icebreaker questions, and that is, they are also, what you also notice about them is that they are not fact-based questions, they're opinion-based questions or personal experience-based questions. So these are just designed to get us talking as a group, to get you interacting with each other as we start on this topic, and to get thinking in the right direction as far as the topic goes. So here's the first question: what was your first job? What was your first job? Take a moment and share with the other people in your group what was your first job. It might be interesting to hear what each member of the group did when they first started working. Take a moment and talk about that. All right, second question here. Why would you say that you enjoy your work? Why or why not? Why or why not? Now, this may be something, if you find yourself in the same room as as one of your coworkers or supervisor, this could be a little bit touchy, so you might have to be careful how you answer it. But do you enjoy your work? Do you enjoy your work? Why or why not? Share that, and let your group know what you come up with for that one. Okay, well, I wonder if everybody enjoyed their work. I'll just answer those just very briefly, whether you're interested or not. My first job was a lawnmower repairman. Actually, my father did lawnmower repair, and so I worked in his lawnmower repair shop a little bit when I was probably starting when I was a young teenager, and up as long as he had the shop. But don't begin to think that I know how to repair lawnmowers. I know how to clean the grass out from under lawnmowers, and pretty much everything else I learned I forgot, I think. But that was my first job. Second, and that other question is, do I enjoy my work? Yeah, I really do. I really enjoy what I do, and I'm very thankful that I think I have what I do for a living is something that is well suited to who I am, and so and you know, I'm thankful that I'm able to use gifts and abilities that I have in my work. So yeah, I am. Some of you know that I work in the hospice field, and so that has been something that I would have never thought about working in, but I really enjoy doing that very much. It's great, and I'm also very thankful for the opportunities I have at Lifepoint here as I serve in different capacities and kind of fill in different gaps as well at Lifepoint. And so what I do, I'm very thankful for both the opportunities I have and the different responsibilities and tasks that they come along with that. There's some that are more challenging than others, but I'm thankful for all of them because all of them are growing opportunities. So, okay, enough about those two. Let's move on to what we're going to look at this morning. We're going to look at a passage about work. So I believe Matt talked about work this morning, and he talked about how work started, where it came from, the origin of work, which really originated with God, right? God designed work, He created work. It was part of His original creation. He asked Adam to keep the garden, and so this is something that was right from the very beginning. Now, I want to look at a passage in the New Testament where the Apostle Paul talks about something a little bit different because it's not exactly about employees, but it's actually about slaves. But there's a lot of crossover here, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But let me read this passage, Colossians 3:22 through 25. Let me actually have you read it. Colossians chapter 3, verses 22 through 25. Take a few minutes, and this is a short passage, so read it in a couple of different versions, perhaps. If you have a couple of different versions represented in your group there, read that in those different versions, and then we'll come back here in just a minute and rejoin the discussion. Okay. Sorry, I'm chugging the water this morning. Colossians 3:22 through 25. Let me read this to you. Verse 22 says, "Bondservants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ." And for the wrongdoer will be paid back for the wrong he has done, and there is no partiality. I skipped verse 25 there. So you have this passage about bondservants or slaves, maybe some of your versions may say, or servants. I'm not sure what all the versions say, but even though, so let me move on to this first question, and then we'll delve into this a little bit and maybe give us a little bit of explanation. But even though this passage is about slaves, okay, it's technically about slaves, bondservants, both slaves and employees have work in common. What does it mean to work with sincerity of heart? What does it mean to work with sincerity of heart? Let me say that again. Even though this passage about slaves, both slaves and employees have work in common, what does it mean to work with sincerity of heart? Take a moment and discuss that as a group. Okay, well, let me just say something about this, because this is kind of a tricky topic when we run across slavery in the Old Testament or the New Testament, either one. It's something that I think requires a little bit of explanation, because in America, when we hear the word slave or slavery, our minds probably understandably and maybe even rightfully and reasonably go back to they go back to American slavery and that really despicable and tragic season in our nation's history where primarily and almost exclusively African American people were enslaved. And so our mind goes to that and we think, oh man, this is endorsing that somehow or accepting that. Well, no, it's not. Let me talk about slavery in this Roman period in which Paul wrote Colossians, and really during the entire writing of the New Testament, during that period, what it was like. It was quite different, I would say, in that period. First of all, the number of slaves was staggering. So there were times when 1/3 of the Roman Empire were slaves. There were points at which 1/3 of the entire population of the Roman Empire were slaves. So this was extremely widespread. It wasn't just a certain locality or a few little spots where this was an issue, but this was everywhere. That slavery was just everywhere you went in the New Testament during New Testament times. And the other piece that I would like to mention to you, and these are really ways that we need to view slavery in the New Testament instead of through the lens of the American experience, is also that slaves served at all levels of society in the empire, all levels of society. So you had slaves who were lawyers, you had slaves who were physicians, you had slaves that did these very skilled trades and had very high competency. These were slaves. So slaves were not relegated to just manual labor or something like that. These were people that had all kinds of capabilities and skills. And maybe most notably, slaves were not restricted to one ethnic group, right? In America's history, it was almost exclusively an African American phenomenon. But in the time the New Testament was written, this was something that all different kinds of people were enslaved. Now, obviously, Romans would conquer different areas of the world, and sometimes those slaves came from there. So wherever that happened, you would wind up with slaves from that region. And so it was very widespread. It was very multi-ethnic. It was very diversified, let's say, as far as this goes. So enough about that. It just gives a little background on the issue of slavery in the New Testament. But let me go to the question here, and the question is, what does it mean to work with sincerity of heart? What does it mean to work with sincerity of heart? Well, some of you would be familiar with the term teacher's pet. Probably most of us have heard that. Maybe in school you were called teacher's pet, or you called somebody else a teacher's pet. And what that meant was this was a student who was always trying to ingratiate the teacher toward him or herself, right? He or she was always trying to do stuff to make the teacher like them and to gain favorable treatment from the teacher. And that's really, I think, what is in view here. Another term we might use for people like this, more in the job context, are maybe a yes man or a yes woman. These are the people that are always trying to make the boss like them, make the supervisor like them, so that they will be able to get promotions or whatever. And we're familiar with people like that. And that's really, I think, what, and by the way, maybe these people treat their coworkers very badly or their classmates very badly, but they are always trying to treat the people that are above them in ways that will ingratiate themselves to them. That's really what I think is in view here when it says work with sincerity of heart. Work with sincerity of heart. Because there's always this temptation to work well when it matters, right? And matters from a human perspective. When people are watching, when the higher ups are looking at us, when the big wheels are around. That is the common practice, or I would say that is a common practice. But sincerity of heart is different than that, right? It doesn't just care about how a job is done when the supervisor is around or when the boss is around. The sincerity of heart I wrote down is doing the right thing when no one is looking. And I say that, but that's not the whole story, actually. Because when we say we do what's right when no one is watching, that means nobody maybe from the manager's office or nobody from the higher up the organizational chart. But the Lord is always watching. This passage tells us that we're working for the Lord, and it says to do it with sincerity of heart, realizing that He is our master, that He is the manager, ultimately, that He is the one who is in charge of us. And as servants, as workers in this world, we are working with a view toward pleasing our master, who is always present, who is always watching, who is always with us. And so while it is easy to just try to make the human leaders happy by doing what we think they want us to do, God, through the Apostle Paul, comes along and says, no, you need to understand your master is the Lord. Your master is Christ, who has redeemed you, and He is always there. And when we work with sincerity of heart, we work in such a way that we recognize that He's in charge, that He's our master, regardless of whether there is an earthly manager or supervisor in the building or around. We do what's right because it's right, because it honors Him. And so that's what it means, I think, to work with sincerity of heart. Second question, is it possible to use work as worship? Is it possible to use work as worship? Take a moment and discuss that. Yeah, this question is it possible to view work as worship? Well, I think that's kind of maybe an easier question to answer yes or no. The why and how that works out is a little bit more involved. But yes, absolutely 100%, it is possible to view work as worship. Brother, there's a book that was written, I think, my goodness, 1500s, 1600s, by a monk named Brother Lawrence, and the book was called The Practice of the Presence of God. And this is a very interesting person. He was in France, a monk in France, but he worked most of his career, if you want to call it that, as a monk, was spent working in the kitchen. And then later, when he had a disorder with his legs, he ended up repairing sandals in the monastery. That was what Brother Lawrence did. And, Brother Lawrence viewed everything he did as an act of worship. Whether he was washing dishes in the kitchen or whether he was repairing sandals, whatever he was doing, he viewed it as a divine offering to the Lord. So these weren't, washing dishes or preparing meals or fixing sandals, things like that, very mundane things. But Brother Lawrence rightly saw those as things God cared about, that God was interested in what he was doing and how he was serving, and whether he was repairing those sandals in an excellent manner. or whether he was preparing that food in a way that was the best he could, and in a way to honor the Lord who he served. So, yes, it's possible to view work as worship. This past, I guess it was past December, my family and I had the opportunity to go to Charlotte, North Carolina, and visit the Billy Graham Museum. And there it had a reconstruction of Ruth Graham's kitchen there in the museum, and their home in Montreat, North Carolina. And Ruth Graham had a sign over her sink in the kitchen, and it said on the sign, "Divine service will be conducted here 3 times daily." Divine service will be conducted here 3 times daily. I thought that was just a great illustration of what this passage has to say. Ruth Graham understood that even these most mundane tasks of just washing dishes, doing things like that, was a divine service. It was something that was to be undertaken with the strength that God provides and for his glory. So, yes, is it possible to use work as worship? Yes. You think about that this week as you do whatever job you have. Think about offering that to the Lord as worship. It could be transformative for your workday. Next question, what does it look like to work heartily? What does it look like to work heartily? Okay, take a moment and discuss that, what it means to work heartily. All right. Literally, I looked this up in the original language in Greek, and what it says is to work from the soul. Literally, it's when it says heartily, it literally means to work from the soul. Let me just show you that in the passage here. Bondservants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service, again, as a people pleaser, as a teacher's pet, as a yes woman or yes man, but with sincerity of heart. Sincerity of heart, doing it from the heart, doing it in a way that is not just so people can see what we're doing. Do it is from sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. Okay, so work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. What does that mean? Well, it means to work from the soul. It means to work from a place that's inside us. Not just go through the motions, but to do it intentionally and purposefully and for God's honor. You know, there's a passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. I believe it's 31. And Paul's talking about some of the cultural issues they had to deal with there in Corinth as far as idol feasts and food offered to idols and things like that. But Paul makes this very final and pithy conclusion to that discussion. He says, whatever you do, actually, I'm quoting this verse. He says, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. And that's really what Paul is saying here as well. He's just using different words. When he says to work from the soul, he's saying glorify God in whatever you do. The most mundane things, whether you deem it as important or not, honor God with that. Do it for his glory. Do it for his fame, for his reputation, to bring a worship and praise to his name by the way that we conduct ourselves, by the way that we work. And so that's what it means, I think, to work heartily. And last question here, how does verse 25 help us to deal with those situations where we do not receive the recognition we feel that we are due in our occupation? Let me say that again. How does verse 25 help us to deal with those situations where we do not receive the recognition we feel that we are due in our occupation? Take a moment and talk through that. Okay, verse 25, let me read that to you just to rehearse. Verse 25 said, well, verse 20, verse 23, and actually I should have said verses 24 through 25, I'm sorry. But it says, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. For the wrongdoer will be paid back for the wrong he has done, and there is no partiality. So that's all together, and really I meant to include verse 24 there as well. But verse 24 and 25, you'll notice, are emphasizing that the Lord is the one who gives the reward, and He's the one that treats with no partiality the wrongdoer. And so this is really a very interesting verse that reveals a lot to us. I think that what he's saying here is that the Lord is the one who rewards. Lord is the one who, without partiality, recompenses us for our labor. And so we may be in a context, you may be in a context where you work, where you do something meritorious, something really good, and you just don't get the recognition you feel you deserve. You get passed over for the promotion. You don't get the memo sent out about you. You don't get whatever kind of accolades they have at your workplace. But it says, take heart, because the Lord notices what you do at your workplace and everywhere else. The Lord is watching, and He cares about us and what we're doing. And so the Lord has got His eye on us. He is paying attention to what's going on. He cares. And so this is really the heart of this, that He's the one that is going to reward us according to what we've done. And I wrote down here that we should live for an audience of one. We should live for an audience of one, right? Not for the accolades of those who might be our supervisors or those who might notice us, but we live for the audience of one who notices everything we do and is always watching. And the Lord rewards us regardless of human respect. So you may not feel respected in your job. You may not feel noticed in your job. You may not feel honored in your job. But the Lord notices what you do. And if we work heartily, with sincerity of heart, honoring God as an act of worship, He notices and He rewards. And He will reward us for that. Maybe not in this life, but in the life to come, certainly, is what this is talking about. And so how important for us to view our work as worship, to serve with sincerity of heart, not because somebody's watching us. Well, yes, work because someone's watching us, not because people are watching us, because the Lord is watching us. And because He's going to give us a reward for what we do. Let me close us in prayer, and then we will catch up with you next time. Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for your love for us. Thank you for this passage that we've had to look at today. Father, I thank you that even though earthly leaders may not notice what we do, you always notice what we do, and you're faithful to reward us in eternity for our faithful service to you. Help us to view our work as worship. Help us to serve with sincerity of heart, working heartily as for you and not for people. Help us to do that this week, and we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, thank you very much for being with us again. It's always good to be with you, and I hope that maybe you can apply some of these things tomorrow while you're at work. And just don't forget to view your work as worship. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.